change.
It's recording. It say pause, stop.
Yeah, you good, bro.
Yeah, is that recording in the top right-hand corner?
Cool. All right, let's get this going. So, peace, y'all. This is Slangston Hughes, the connoisseur of fine rhyme, one half of the dynamic duo behind Druffo Radio. For my folks out there in the wonderful radio land not familiar with Druffo Radio, we are the sole provider of New Orleans-based, New Orleans-focused hip-hop and bounce, as well as smacks and slaps from around the world on WWOZ 90.7 FM and WWOZ.org on the internet. The reason, I guess, behind this interview series that we've been doing bi-weekly, it does not have a name as of yet. I will get there sooner than later, but that ain't important. What's important is the artists and being able to give folks a continuous platform, even though this pandemic has, kind of obstructed us, unfortunately, from being able to do interviews in the studio because, the Rona is real and things of that nature, you know what I mean? Just being able to reach out to folks, especially when they have new music and new projects out. So, it's a perfect segue to be getting into this little conversation with the homies. Mr. J, Baton Rouge based MC. That's J like French pronunciation. I know I done seen a couple of folks for the past couple of weeks during these interviews and on social media saying Jai and all type of rigmarole. And we're not going to do that. Over here at Druffo Radio, we want to be accurate. We want to be concise. We want to be on it. So, J apostrophe AI French. So it's J. And then La Dialogue DiCaprio, North Memphis, representative, producer, MC, but also based out of LA at this time. So welcome, gentlemen. How we doing today? You know what I mean?
That's good.
What's good? What's good?
Yeah. It's been a minute, but it's always a pleasure to be in the company of lyrical scholars like yourselves. You dig? So I guess the first question, and before I get into that first question, so we at Druffo have been playing TGIF, in addition to the main premise behind this interview being the fact that y'all have new music out called Plugged In, which just dropped a couple of weeks ago. So before we get into the music and, a couple of questions that I have, let's just, I think it's important to be able to set the scene and set the tone for this interview by just letting folks know, musically where you're at with it. So, I think it's important to give folks a little low-key flex, the resumes, briefly before we get into the now. We have to get into how we actually got here to begin with. And that's a perfect pun because I just remembered y'all have a track called Resume. So with that being said, Di, let's get your resume right quick, and then we'll go into Mr. J.
Oh, a personal resume, man. Probably 50 plus releases, award-winning producer, lyricist, overground, underground. I mean, I'm the epitome of that. Me and Mr. J, we go back since, man, maybe like 2001, 2002. And been recording since then, man. Back in New Orleans, back when I lived in New Orleans, pre-Katrina, just getting it in and just collecting all these tracks. And that laid the foundation to the Plugged In project, which we just kind of came up with, just going back and almost reminiscing on those tracks. Like, man, we need to do one, like culmination of all of those collaborations.
Word. Yeah. Jay, what you got?
Yo, Mr. J, 1/3 or one half of the J Squared crew. I'm hip hop activist, free music representative, one of the co-founding members of the Tiger Woods crew out of New Orleans. One of the founding members of the Mic Check Battle Series out of New Orleans, went coast to coast, Philly to the Bay Area, California. And I'm about 10 solo projects deep as far as myself. So, like the dialogue said, man, since the early 2000s, actually, putting in the footwork in the late 90s, I used to DJ as well, used to DJ first. So, just being able to get on the mic and come to the forefront and bring the good lyrics to you all. I'm happy to still be in the game. We've seen a lot come and go, but we're still in it and we're still having fun. And, that's what's important.
Where from my own personal knowledge, the DJ name, is it the same name now, or was it something different?
Oh, it's the same.
Okay,
It's the same. You know, back then when I met you, I was on the radio 102.9 with Mike Swift.
gotcha.
So, you know, I've been rocking with Mr. J since, man, like 99. 99. You know, I had to drop the birth name and really come into my own. But you know, that's New Orleans doing.
Indeed. So, I mean, even though y'all have kind of, you know, given a very brief synopsis of the poignancy and importance of why you're essential to the game and to the industry and things of that nature, I think it's important to, you know, even emphasize that even further. And I guess the better question to ask, or the next question to ask, is why are you important to hip hop? So let me start with Jay, and then we'll go to Di after that. Excuse me, let me clarify. Why are you important to New Orleans hip hop? I think that's the specific question that I want to ask.
Okay. Well, I'm important to New Orleans hip hop because New Orleans hip hop scene actually birthed Mr. J. And so I went from hanging on stages to carrying crates for DJs such as Cycle Ward and Dynamite Dave Soul, to, you know, hosting events like Mic Check 2001, and really just having the opportunity to rock a lot of different stages, you know, in and out of the city. And so, you know, I had to earn everything I got, and the city showed me love. And so that's why it's just important, because, you know, I've been through a whole lot and I've seen a whole lot. And, you know, we always just get love in the city. And that's important because, you know, if you show love, then it's going to come back to you because of those musical roots in New Orleans, soul, jazz, blues, and all that. And so, you know, not only bounce hip hop, but traditional hip hop and other styles, you know, from various parts of the city. You know, I've had a chance to really just embrace that and build with all the artists, you know, in and out of the city. So 5 and 4 is real.
Word.
Yeah. I mean, um, why I feel like I'm important to New Orleans hip hop is that that I-55, man, we connected. You know what I'm saying? Like when you come through Memphis off that bridge, going off the 40, it says like the home of the blues, birthplace of rock and roll, and you already know New Orleans is the home of jazz. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's already that connection. I got familiar connections, like family in New Orleans, and pretty much the time that I was in New Orleans, everything that is popping right now, I was in the mix of. Like artists from Lil Wayne to Currency, we were in the mix. Cycle Ward DJs, even from the underground, the Bionic Browns, the Euphonetics, you know, we were definitely in the mix. And while everyone was mixtaping down there, I was mixtaping just along with them. You know what I'm saying? It was just like we ran alongside the major. I think when Cash Money was going on that run, we were like the underground equivalent to that going on in New Orleans, and that was the basis of, you know, my mixtapes, the overground underground mixtapes. I did those records from at least from 2000 to 2004 on the corner of Tulane and Carrollton with a 4-track, just wanging it out. You know what I'm saying? Like I was in New Orleans putting that Memphis gumbo, you know what I'm saying, that Memphis in the New Orleans and putting it together and bringing all of these elements in way back then. And I always call it, in my mind, I distinguish a pre-Katrina, post-Katrina. This was all popping pre-Katrina, you
Right.
know, and everybody that kind of came out of that, I either have encountered, whether it was battling or whatever like that, or we were in the same room or we were moving the same way at shows and stuff like that. So I mean, definitely New Orleans. I mean, like New Orleans to me, if I can always call a trilogy, it's gonna always be Memphis, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. You know, Memphis is my home, but New Orleans is like that's my home. You know what I'm saying? And LA is my home now. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a triangle. But you can hear those influences in all of the projects from way back then even to now.
Word. So before I get into, you know, asking questions about the new project and whatnot, kind of going off my own schedule of sorts. So with y'all mentioning, you know, meeting and starting to collaborate as early as 2001, 2002, just kind of looking at more bigger picture stuff. You know, with it being 2020, how do you feel, respectively, about the differences within the music industry compared to back then, roughly 18, 19 years ago, and then what's going on currently? Do you see anything? Well, let's do this. Let's let Di take what's different, because I know he's going to give me a good take on that. And let me get with Jay in regards to what do you feel is similar. So let's start with the similarities, and then I'll go to Di with the what's different.
Well, I mean, what's different? I would say, I have to kind of do the similarities to say what's different. At least what is similar in my perspective is I grew up in Memphis, so everything I hear on the radio now is pretty much stylistically what we were doing years ago that folks used to kind of front on. And you know, I lived around the corner from Juicy J and Project Pat, and I heard these records, and you know, they were just kind of getting ragged about it. Not everybody kind of has those 3/6 kind of sounding records.
Right.
The difference I would say now is it's an easier barrier of entrance. I mean, I remember going to their Warehouse Music on Carrollton and reeing up and buying 150 pack spindles of CDs to take to an actual burner in my dorm room and manually burn these CDs and manually sell these CDs. Walk up to the Rod Smooths and the Rob Nices. I was hitting up DJs with CDs with my name written on it, and that's kind of how you had to kind of hit the people and reach the people. It was very, I mean, the internet was there, but it was very, very limited back then. You know, I would get like these fans, and people would hit me up from like New York, and it would be like random places that people would get my CDs. Because I obviously that now people will show me pictures of the actual CDs that I wrote. I'm like, dang, how did you get that? But they were floating around, you know. So that's the difference. Now the barrier of entry is just so easy. You could just throw up a link. You know what I'm saying? Throw up you know, a SoundCloud link, or you know, um, throw up pretty much any type of link, and then you're just kind of exposed to the world. But back then, you kind of had to work for it a little bit harder.
Right. All right, Jay, and how about you as far as the similarities that you see between the game back then and what's going on now?
Well, what I feel is similar in the game now and back then. It's still really hard to break a record on the radio. It's probably 1,000 times harder to break a single on the radio now, just because of the programming. And so that's always just been like an establishment that's hard to get through, because honestly, what people don't, the common person doesn't understand is that the songs on the radio is like a very small percentage of the whole that's out there. And so you got so many more artists out now. And you know, a lot of them are doing their thing independently. So you know, whatever you hear on the radio is really, you know, 1% of the whole. What's also the same is that the enthusiasm around hip hop, especially with the young people, the younger artists, is still high. You know, hip hop is the one genre that actually attracts so many people who may not naturally be a musician, may not even be a trained musician, but if you're interested in the art, then there's a way for you to get in, even if you don't have a lot of money. And so I'm always meeting kids and young adults who trying to, you know, just make some music, you know, because it's for them. And so, you know, they're not really worried about the big picture. They're like, I just want to do it. And so, you know, that hunger that we had back then, I meet people all the time with the same hunger. And so I think that's what keeps me young and youthful, because I'm always building with them, even if I don't like everything that they're doing. But just that spirit, you know, that keeps you sharp, because a battle is a battle. And so by me being an educator, you know, I recall, I went like 8 years not writing anything. Like I was just rapping, freestyling, you know, basically battling, you know, students at lunch shifts and at summer camps, wearing them out. And so you know, they gain respect from me because they understand like, oh, he really is a legend. You know, he could hold his own, you know, and they sitting there like, man, you know, I got to go back and I got to work on my thing because I'm trying to knock out Mr. J, you know, by the end of the summer. So, you know, that hunger is still there. Um, you know, picking it back on what Dialogue said, like what's different is that a lot of these young cats are really going in with the independent mind frame. And so, I mean, they getting on TuneCore, they getting on CD Baby and all that, and you know, recording themselves, and they getting out there, and they coming back and getting that money. So I'm not mad at that. You know, even if the records don't hit, you know, the energy is there, and so that's gonna keep it going.
Word. So, I mean, Di had mentioned it earlier about, you know, access and being able to, you know, have music and then those CDs get to so many different places. With that being said, you know, the track 50 Pack Spindles, you know, as independent artists, what setbacks or obstacles do you feel that y'all faced, you know, in the first couple of years as far as like distributing your own music, you know, to listeners and to audiences and whatnot, as independent artists?
Man.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Honestly, honestly, when I really got in, I was basically a pretty broke college student, and so money was a major issue. You know, I actually went at it from a roundabout way to where I got with some brothers and just evaluated other parts of the game as far as booking shows, putting on battles, making TV shows, and you know, getting money like that, and then turning the money and doing what I want to do with it. And so for years, I really played the background. You two artists who said they were nice and they were okay, but you know, I had to humble myself to really learn the other facets of the business. And then years later, I got a chance and I've touched some more money to where, okay, I know what I want to do, how I'm going to put myself out, or if I'm you know, going on a partnership deal independently with somebody else. So for me, yeah, it was money because I'm seeing, you know, people at the time, you know, they're like, yo, you got 20 stacks, you get your song on the radio. You know, I'm like, I don't have it. You know, I remember being with the Effortless crew. I never forget this. We had a little money we were stacking up, and we were like, okay, this was after T.I.'s first album, and he was away for a little while. He had to go way under and come back, do chitlin circuit shows. And so we had to connect with the Nappy Roots. And we were like, okay, well, if we got these G's, who we gonna get for a feature on our single? You know, it was like we had to basically vote between T.I. and the Nappy Roots. And till this day, I'm kicking myself because we picked the Nappy Roots. I mean, and it was hot, and we got like two of them on the track. But I'm like, man, I know we could have gotten T.I. and T.I. blew. T.I. blew like 16 months later. So, you know, it's just that type of stuff. And money was a big issue in the late 90s and the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, man. I mean, I was like, I remember the same thing with that T.I. thing. I mean, it was just, I think now because you look at radio, you look at the game, like the South is everywhere. But around the early 2000s, the South wasn't, like people will say the South was getting love. They weren't getting love like that. You know, I mean, they weren't getting love as in, like how it is now. It's just all respect. It ain't no back talk, nothing. Like back then, it was still back talk. You got to think when we was popping. Lil Jon was just he was just coming up the hill. He wasn't on top of the hill yet. He was just coming up the hill. So you still had this identity of the South where, you know, they would try to throw that backpack on me, and I'm like, man, I'm from North Memphis. Like, have you heard my raps, fool? You know what I'm saying? Like, you would get that, but it was just the South was trying to find his identity. Was South crunk? Was South gangster? Was South? I mean, in Memphis for the longest was on the what you call that hardcore, which they call it lo-fi now, but that sound was since 1990. You know, so it was almost trying to find his identity. New Orleans identity shifted from almost 96 to 98, No Limit, to 98 to, you know what I'm saying, the early 2000s to a Cash Money, which was more bounce influence. And you just, you had a lot of that going on. So I mean, my thing was like, I mean, the difficulty that you had in that was staying true to who you were, because I always knew who I was as an artist, even back then. Like I said, I grew up around Juicy J and the project. Like if I didn't meet these people, the Master P's, if I didn't meet these guys so young, I'd be like, well, maybe let me just kind of get on the wave and be that. I met these guys. I'm like, they're doing it the way they want to do it. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. If I never met them, I probably would be, I mean, just a dope dude that may have had to do something to get on and then continue to do something to stay on. So that's where you hear people say that they're independent artists. I was saying independent way back in the day when it wasn't cool to say I'm an independent artist. Labels, Capitol Records, it was certain situations. I was like, nah, that doesn't make sense to me. A 360, like, it doesn't make sense. I'll be broke. Well, you could be 100% broke. Well, I'm like even now you can't even tour. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, well, I know I own my content. I can always build upon that. I was all about ownership and stuff like that. And you know, I mean, that was probably personally with me was maybe that independent attitude, but then at least in the South at that time was trying to find that identity because it was so much going on, which was an exciting time, but you couldn't definitively, which was a bad thing now because now you listen to something that's like, oh, well, that's South, and that's not really the identity, but you're taking 9 to 10 states with all these different identities versus a California that's one state and a New York that's one state, so.
Yeah, no, I think y'all bring up a good point as well, is because, being an artist from the South, regardless of where you go, when you tour, it's always, say for instance, myself dealing with that where you say, oh, I'm from New Orleans, like, oh, you don't sound like you from New Orleans, right? So it's like, what actually does an artist from a New Orleans, what does an artist from Memphis, what does an artist from Baton Rouge sound like? So, you get to these points where I guess listeners as well as like, just general hip hop appreciators ultimately are trying to put you in some form of a box that makes it acceptable to their palate, their musical palate, or to their ears. So with that being said, when you think of, I guess this is like an educational piece for folks, when they watch this, as far as like, when you think about a Baton Rouge artist, a Baton Rouge MC, quintessentially, like what comes to mind? And that's not necessarily just musically speaking, but I think culturally speaking as well, you know what I mean, to be able to say what a quintessential Baton Rouge artist is, or what a quintessential Memphis MC is.
Man, the quintessential Baton Rouge artist is just raw with 2 W's. You know, Baton Rouge cats don't care about anybody. Okay, like when I was coming up, there was no gangs, none of that. Like really, you really didn't have neighborhood rivalries. It was just kind of like people acting bad. You cut the beats on, and somebody gonna fight. That's just that's in the blood. I see it with my own kids, and I'm like, man, I certain songs I can't play because they just get hyped, and it's just raw emotion and energy. And so that's a lot of guys from Baton Rouge that I respect who really came through the ranks and represented. Even like Boosie and Webby and them, man. I used to record at the same. My mentor was a radio DJ, and so he was recording on tape back in 97, 98 when I was dabbling with music. And so Boosie's people, the Trill Entertainment guys, with Pimp C and all them who lived out here, they would come in on a late night session. And so, back then Boosie was like, man, might have been 13, 14, and so he would come in with these guys and they would do their thing at like 1, 2 in the morning and had to be out before 5 or 6 before the guy's family woke up. He was like, man, y'all got to smoke outside. But it was raw. It's raw energy, raw talent, raw emotion. I don't care how you feel. And so, even though my style was a little different and probably a different seasoning than them, you know, because my music grew up in New Orleans. I mean, they got some guys from here who could bust, you know, and so Max Minnelli, you know, they came up under CeeLo. That's a whole, you know, lineage of MCs and rappers, you know, from South Baton Rouge. And so, you know, I'm happy that I built and had the opportunity to really get with proper English around 2001, 2002. You know, he actually was runner up in Mic Check 2002 in New Orleans. But I had to come back to Baton Rouge and meet this guy because he sent me an email. It was like, man, I'm the best out. And I'm from Baton Rouge. And I looked at him like, okay, I know Baton Rouge rappers, a lot of them rap about gang banging or, you know, gangsterfied stuff. But, you know, he was different. You know, it was in him, but his content when he rapped was a lot different. But yeah, just raw, you know. And so the one thing I wish we had, which I represent, when I was coming up, a lot of the guys, they didn't want to go to New Orleans. And I was like, man, y'all should just go, y'all blown up here. Y'all need to go do some shows down there. Because you could do a show any day of the week in New Orleans.
Right.
He really didn't come around, you know, until later. And so, you know, I always felt like deep down inside, someone was just scared to rap, you know, in New Orleans because of some things they might have heard. But I'm like, if you raw, you raw, right?
Right.
So, you know, I think that's why I break the mold and I feel confident in that. And so, yeah, I've done some shows at a real thugged out crowd for thugged out crowds and clubs in Baton Rouge. But, you know, I could get down in New Orleans too. And, you know, it's all good.
Hey, agreed, man. You know, Memphis, I would say it's hard. If y'all raw, we hard. Like everything is, you know, when you listen to that Ike and Tina, you know, we never ever. You know what I'm saying? It's rough. You know what I'm saying? Up in Memphis, I mean, it's what it is, even from the blues to Stax Records, just gritty, you know. And I mean, at least with the hip hop, I mean, it was like this hardcore kind of sound from the '90s until like the early 2000s. Like everybody kind of rap like that. The so-called Migos flow. I think 2 Chainz had a lyric that said, "This flow is from Migo. They got it from 3-6." Like, cause no one was rapping like that. I ain't talking about Bone Thugs. That staccato, that was Memphis. Like they wasn't even rapping like that in Chicago. That's how I used to rap, and I kind of still put it in. But like to be a MC where I'm from, I mean, I think more or less I can't even if I love hip hop and all of that, like I can't neglect like my surroundings. Like I'm almost I would say like someone like a Lupe Fiasco or something, like when you or Common, like when you learn where these people really from, you like I mean I hear this, but they're from a certain section, so it's a certain texture and I always kind of feel like it's a certain force behind those words. But I mean, like the I guess you would say like the standard Memphis artist is supposed to be dope dealing, pimping. You know what I'm saying? But then even within that, there's a lot of lyricism, the 8 Ball and MJGs, the Player Fly. I wouldn't say all 3-6's 3-6 Mafia is lyrical, but you listen to a Lord, you know, well, Project Pat is a poet. You know what I'm saying? The
Truly.
Pata. And like Lord Infamous is really I was Lord Infamous and maybe Coops the nigga, rest in peace. But they are literally the architect of everything you hear on the radio today. And if you tell me otherwise, play me a record before 1990 that sound like how these dudes was rapping, because that's how everyone rapped. You know, so it was like it was like a whole time where the whole city rapped like that. But then you have someone like me that's a little bit more lyrical. It's not, I mean, you have a new crop of people coming up in the city that's a little bit more lyrical, that may not be as gritty, you know what I'm saying, as hard, as I would say, like hard from, I guess you say, a lyrical standpoint of like a street perspective. But it's coming around to that. But like I would say, what I feel like I define is the perfect merge of the two, because I'm giving you that portion of it, but then I'm balancing it out. So you don't get a whole bunch of talk songs, or you don't get a whole bunch of murder songs, and I'm not even rapping about that, but it's this I guess you would say it's almost like a lament a lot of times of things that I've seen, of people I've been around, and kind of doing it in a way that's a little more lyrical. I mean, it's lyricism is such a subjective thing, but I mean, in my definition of it, where it's something where I guess you would say a hip hop head would listen to it and say, okay, well, this is a little bit more filled out lyrically than maybe just your ABC, which is not a, not a knock to people that do that, but not a simple type rhyme style,
Hmm.
and that's what I, tend to represent.
Gotcha. But I gotta ask, man, with the new record, and like I said, we've been playing, the joint for the past maybe like month and a half, two, maybe a little bit longer than that. TGIF with West B on that joint. Why is that track not on Plugged In?
Oh, that's a distributor. That's a distribution issue. The
Okay.
distributor, they took it off because I had it as a single. So the way that they did it on the streaming services is that, let me go into a little bit for you guys that don't know the intricate dealings of a streaming service. Now they have audio encoders that actually, um, and they have these same things on YouTube where it can kind of, if it's a duplicate song, it kicks the song out. So that's what happened, was because we released the single prior to releasing the actual LP. It took those and kind of left them like in a maxi single type dealing, and then put the whole project together. That's why, it's a lot of stuff that's going on with the streaming. I do streaming more so to get more access to more people, but I'm definitely more so, indie in that regards, to get people to go to our Bandcamp, because the Bandcamp has a little bit more. We have a few bonus songs, I believe, or we have a bonus song on the Bandcamp. We have merch that is coming that's a little bit more direct than kind of having to deal with the, I guess you would say, the rules of the distributor. Because I got this red laden letter from the distributor, like, you can't do that, but it's the music that I own. So I mean, even as an indie artist, you know what I'm saying, you still got to deal with that.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a good point, with June 5th being the next day that Bandcamp is waiving their fees, their revenue share and whatnot. So just to clarify though, TGIF is on the Bandcamp edition, correct?
Oh, yeah, it's all together.
Okay, gotcha.
It's all
The way
together.
that is, well, the way that it looks on like maybe Spotify, Napster, and a few other streaming sites is that it's showing this together, but then it has the artwork for the original single versus having the artwork for the LP. Which, I mean, when I'm looking at it, it's showing all of them together
Hmm.
because it said Mr. J and LaDialogue DiCaprio. But yeah, that's the rules of dealing with the distributor, and the way that it's not necessarily the distributor that I'm going through, but the way that the stores want the tracks to look or
Right.
something from what I'm getting. So I'm just like, oh man, well, that it gives you a little bit more, more mystery to it. You know what I'm saying? Because it might be a few other tracks that may be coming soon and a super deluxe version of Plugged In.
Gotcha.
Yo,
What's up?
thank y'all for spending it though. I appreciate
Oh, no
Yes.
that
doubt.
because that was the plan. We dropped it a couple months before the album was finally ready, and so we got two versions of it: the
Right.
main mix and the remix, and they both feature West B's. And the video, we got a couple versions of the video. So the first one is out now. You haven't even seen it because it just came out. And so we got a couple other versions of the video coming out too. So we're just excited, man. It's a good time. Even though it's a weird time, but every Friday TGIF. And so we're just gonna ride it till the wheels fall off. MrJ.bandcamp.com, theoverground.com. It's there.
Word.
Yes, sir.
And with that new video, where can folks find that at? Where's that at currently?
It's YouTube, man. It's gonna be circulating. Like that's what I know. So speaking of YouTube, we have our own show that we've been doing, and so it's really similar to this format called Plugged In. 10 questions, and so when you having an authentic conversation, it's gonna be about 10 questions, and
Mm-hmm.
so we're not counting them all for you, and it's not a 10-second hit. We're just hanging out with the fellow artists and just sharing jewels and experiences. So, we figured by the title being Plugged In, everybody we had on the album, whoever we're affiliated with, we're just inviting, and we're having conversations and interviews, and just talking as adults, man. Intellectually, and we're just having a good time. So yeah, when you see the video, you'll see links for the plugged in 10 questions too. And so we having fun. We're having fun. We're really stretching this thing out. It's not a sprint like some artists come out in two weeks and they're done. It's a marathon, and so we're gonna ride to Christmas. And like the dialogue said, we're probably gonna have a plugged in 2.0 or after party because we got so many songs. In the intro, we actually did a mashup mini mix of like all the previous songs we've done, or 80% of them, because some of them didn't make it. And so I think we're gonna go ahead and re-release a compilation of those too. So we're having big fun. That's all we can do.
Yeah, literally all you can do right now. You are not lying about that.
Word.
We are here.
And y'all mentioned, collaborating and working on music since 2001 and 2. What was the significance in 2020 of, collaborating once again and putting out this full-length project? Like, what's the origin behind, or the premise behind Plugged In from that point of view?
I'll answer that. I have been been sending Mr. J, man, I got tracks I know at least from 2015 of just batches. I'll send him a batch, a summer batch, a fall batch. I'm just sending him batches of beats, not for any project in particular, but a lot of the beats that I would send him ended up going for the Clarity, his solo albums, like the Clarity 1.0, and then the Therapy album. And actually the Epiphany albums. Yeah, his last 4 projects, those tracks that I was sending went, there. Now, I have been the main, if the Tiger Woods is the Wu-Tang, I've been the RZA. And I have I have beats, I'm like, okay, well this, and I put aside files. And a lot of those beats, I ended up sending them to Mr. J, like, yo, let's check this out. So that's when we ended up. I wanted him to do another, I wanted him to do another solo. I do my solo projects, and was going through a bad time last year, just trying to get my money up and stuff like that. And I was listening to Clarity a lot, Clarity and Clarity 1.0 a lot, and I was like, man, I just like the vibe. It was positive. It was just, it was just hitting me. So I'm like, man, I want him to do another project. And Mr. J like, nah, man, we need to do a project because we never. And when I thought about it, he was like, we've never done a project together. I mean, me, we got some award winning. Slangston Hughes got some award winning. I like to keep throwing it out when people just say it's regular award winning projects, Thousands of Dialogue, but we never did anything just with us. We've always done singles, or we've always done tracks. So, I mean, that's just kind of, when I would send songs to him, it was just, we were just kind of reminiscing. I mean, we're still in this time, but we were just kind of reminiscing and just kind of putting, I wouldn't say a end mark, because it ain't going to end now, but I mean, just something over this amount of time just to show, because a lot of people, I don't know, like sometimes when you say you rap, and, that's when, young folks come, be like, man, I rap. I'm like, what do you got? Like, I went back and listened to these songs, like, man, we got a lot of songs together. He was on mostly all of my mixtapes, and I have a lot of mixtapes. And like Mr. J has been on a lot of stuff. So it was like, man, I got to get him. And this is before all of this Corona and everything. I mean, I think timing wise, it just kind of happened like it was supposed to happen, because we had been recording it for like 8 months or so, just going back and forth, foreign exchanging it, sending tracks in back. And, since I could not produce the Tiger Woods album that I want to produce, because it's going to come, what I did was I put all of that spirit, and, that's why I was really big on the energy, because I brought in Cope, the Tiger Wood affiliate. I was like, I need to have him speaking on these tracks to kind of put that in, and give me that energy. And West B, I'm like, I got him on there, J Double. So it was like, almost like a family affair, but it's still me and Jay. You know what I'm saying? And it's just it just felt good, you know. Even though some of the songs may have I won't say a somber tone, and more like melancholy tone to it. But I had fun just kind of reminiscing and just kind of kicking it. TGIF is really like us, at the
Oh,
pinnacle
grateful.
of how we used to kick it. You know what I'm saying? But like a lot of the songs is just keeping it real, God body freestyle, just show you I can spit. Like I think people forget that sometimes. Like I'm taking your head off, and I'm lightly just touching. How you hit somebody in the jaw and it kind of rock you a little bit, like, dang, this man just hit me. I just
Right.
rocked you a little bit with that. And that's
Word.
that's just what I wanted to do with that project, at least musically.
I can dig it. Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question as far as, why have Coke on the interludes, but I mean, you definitely just touched base on that. So I'll move into, you also bring up a good point, as far as like the somber tone and the, melancholic expressions kind of being put forth on several tracks. I want to ask in regards to, songs like St. Georgie Porgy, like that interlude, like, that's something that we're seeing right now in the world as far as like, segregationists and white supremacy and just an overall, I guess, legacy or perpetuation of, just overall, racism ultimately at the end of the day. And that is the root, of
Yep.
St. George Parish, right? Like, I don't
Yep.
necessarily know everything about it, but have definitely been keeping up with it, through news and just kind of seeing, once the vote went down and things of that nature. So Jay, talk to me about why, being a black man in Baton Rouge, as well as, an MC within the city, like why was that important to you to be able to speak about that separatist, that segregationist, act, that political act
Yeah.
on this project?
Well, I wasn't going to make a song initially. The dialogue just kept asking me. He was telling me, he was like, man, you got to do a song about the St. George stuff. And I was like, man, what am I going to say? And so he kept asking me, and then the election went through, and they actually won. But months later, he hit me with this beat, and I was like, okay, I think I could get you a real good murder verse and address, what's really going on in the same spirit of the song I did with Marcel P. Black, the Black American Idol. And so, I feel like I'm at the point in my life where, I could speak on these issues comfortably and confidently and really get to the listeners. Because, if anybody who's listening, especially WWOZ in New Orleans, picture New Orleans and the lakefront, the lake area,
Right.
decides they're going to break off and make their own city. Or picture Uptown, just drawing a line and saying, no, we're going to be Uptown now. Really? It like that. First of all, it takes a whole lot of logistics to make something like that happen.
Definitely.
We're talking about municipals, police department, so on and so forth, taxes and all that. And so, basically you got top 2% people who have been stirring this pot for a while, and redrawing lines and making the lines smaller because, what happened was, they couldn't get enough signatures to get on the ballot, at first because people weren't buying it. And so basically they drew the lines in such a way to where, they cut out a lot of people of color, but a lot of people of color still live in the area in those lines, but, they got enough support to put it on the ballot. And then those same people went out and they voted for it. But it's still a process for them to actually be their own city.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right now they're basically it's a section of Baton Rouge, and they want to call it St. George. And so I just felt like I was going to voice my opinion, not really mine, but the people who don't agree with it, because you can't lie to people and say, oh well, we're gonna have cheaper taxes, and we're gonna have the best schools and this and that, And it's like, wait, a year ago, they just finished resurfacing all the streets on this side of town, and more businesses are moving from the north side of town to the southeast part of town. And so you're going to get everything and then roll out? Like, that's weird. And so they in their minds, they're like, yeah, we're going to take over the schools too. And so that's a different discussion by itself. And so it's not that easy. And you can't pull the wool over people's eyes. But some people don't read and some people don't know, what's really going on the other side or within, the entity. So, yeah, man, I feel good about speaking on it. And, I think there's going to be some shakeups coming soon. And we're going to spin the song and, just keep it going, because it's a lot of folks that don't agree with it. And obviously, there is some systemic racism with that. And I don't go for that either. Especially when it comes down to educating children. It's not right.
Word. Yeah, and I definitely wanted to ask that question mainly because I think just seeing within either the last couple of days or certainly within the last week for sure, where East Baton Rouge Parish is still 2% of its taxes is being allocated towards St. George. So, where you live at and where other, like you said, people of color are, the funds that the money that they spend is still going towards that, being allocated towards, this new city. So I think it's, interesting to be able to see how that's played out and how, ultimately it sounds as if they've been strategically doing some redlining to be able to shrink the voting district to a degree to be able to play out and be manipulated in the way that they wanted it to. So that's why I was able to see.
Yeah, you gotta just be aware, because right now I don't live in the parish. I live right outside the parish.
Correct.
So I see things from a totally different perspective, but I work in the parish and I work on all sides of the parish. And so, I can make the correlations and I can see where the segregation, is setting in. And, it's not going to be the best thing if that's what they want to go through with.
Word. Well, I want to throw it to Ladai. I think that, both of y'all obviously being fathers as we've just seen, with our special guest cameo popping up right quick. But, that's something that that I've noticed and heard, in the lyrics of this project. So like when we speak about fatherhood, why, well, not why, but do you, first question, I'll go with Ladai and I'll come back to Jay. Do you feel like that has affected either your writing style or your production, since becoming a father? Like, do you see any difference in you as either a producer or MC since, fatherhood has been added to that skill set?
Oh, nah. Nah, my son be there when I be making beats. No, I'm still with it. Like, I don't know. I thought that it would kind of change. I mean, it changed. I have a son, but I'm still me because I stood on what I stood on before he was here. I don't feel like I regret anything I rapped about or anything I said. I'll stand on it until I'm 80, 90 years old. So I never, some people, they make certain music and then they look back on it and it's like, man, I shouldn't have said that. Everything I said, I meant it. I meant everything I said, whether it was political, ratchet, I meant it. And I can explain to you why I meant it versus, some people, when they express regret, you said it, you didn't either know why you said it or you just said it to be kind of wild and out. As for production, I produced, with my team a little different this time because, we could have went more so like, I guess you would say like the radio record or whatever. It was a particular feeling that I wanted. I wanted to be sample based, you know what I'm saying? Because for a while I wasn't fooling with samples because I was getting ceased and desist. Woo, man, you don't know what I be getting ceased and desist behind these records. Even the records we did, I gotta tell you. Like, this is crazy, but like this one I just didn't care. And I was listening to Anita, I was listening to I was listening to Richard Smallwood, I was listening to these records and getting inspiration from it. And I wanted I mean, beat wise, I guess you would say texture wise, it feels like 80s and 90s. So even with TGIF, I got that kind of New Jack Swing feel to it. But then with Angels, you know, that's kind of like the gospel. But then even, you know, you got Blaze the Verbal Chemist, you know, listening to his record that we have. We actually have two records with him, the God Body Freestyle and Sleeping Giants. You know, it's just these sample based records. I didn't go too hard. Usually, you know, I throw them 808s and we kick them out, you know, but it's more so to listen to the lyrics and like to digest what I'm saying. But the reason I started off with My Resume as the first track on the album was that me and Jay did that record in like '04, I believe.
Yeah, that
And
was
you
our
know,
second one.
yeah, that was like, yo, it might have been, yeah, it might have been like it was like a very early record that we did, and I just kind of just did a newer version of it. But my resume, I mean, resume didn't change. I'm giving you, if you ever wanted to know about me personally, listen to that verse. You know what I'm saying? You know, my Creole mama and my dark skinned pops. Hard back then, stop. Recognized as a genius was my prop. You know what I'm saying? Like, you listen to that verse and that's me. You listen to Mr. J's verse and that's him. Mellow Hype is telling you, you know what I'm saying, that's him, you know. So I mean, just production wise, I think it is not as hard deliberately because that's not what I wanted to come across on this one. I wanted to be a little bit more thought provoking in that regard. So, you know, my son, he listened. He was in the car the other day talking about some George and fun and thing, and like he know
They
the
love it.
music, you know what I'm
They
saying?
love
And
it.
he love it because it's melodic for him. Because he's like, Dada, what is that? You know, so he know, you know, so that one I just chopped it. You know what I'm saying? Getting that Georgie Porgy. You know, you gotta put it like that because Jay was going at it. But like I wanted him to do that record because I'm like, nobody in Baton Rouge as an MC I've heard of was speaking on that issue. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that will make him that will set him apart for all other MCs and rappers in that area. Cause we all could do. I got a jig record. I told him I got a dialogue slide. You know, Drizzy got the Tootsie slide. We gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? Right foot up. We was gonna do that. But I was like, let me give us a J on this so we can get him, you know what I'm saying? Get him, you know, in a different lane so he can stand out. Cause that St. George's thing, man, when I read that article, I was like, yeah, you perfect for this. Because I'm like, it's gonna come back around and you're gonna be right in what you say. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna definitely be right in how you feel, and you're gonna be speaking on the behalf of the people. And then if anybody else come behind you, they're coming behind you because they no one I never heard of any other MC speaking on that. Whether I mean, I don't know if they don't care or, you know, they say they Baton Rouge, but I ain't
Yeah.
even in Baton Rouge and saw that. And I was like, nah, that's what we need to be rapping about. And Jay was like, you know, let me get it. So nah, it ain't changed. Trust me, it was just more deliberate in the sound. Trust.
Gotcha. How about you, Jay? What do you feel as if anything? And I
Yeah.
guess, like, you know,
I
not
changed, brother. I changed.
yeah.
Yeah, I changed, man. For one, like I I haven't really dropped a profane curse word on a record since like probably 2004. Um, and so, you know, even before I had my own kids, I knew where I was going. I knew how I wanted to maximize um, myself, my product, and my legacy. And so I've always, even been a part of the media, you know, at one time, I always valued just putting out my best presentation, my best part that I want to be proud of, no matter how raw it is. And so, you know, no profanity. I gotta keep it clean, but it's more so wisdom though. Like I feel like at this point, I'm kind of like in my KRS-One mode where, you know, I can entertain, but I can educate all at the same time.
Right.
Because man, I got thousands of I don't call them fans, I just call them supporters and listeners. Because like I said, all the kids I didn't battle, all the lessons I've taught, all the recesses and crazy stuff I've broken up, and then all the dances I've DJ'd, and you know, and so all these kids they get older, and so they listen then, but they become more listeners as they get older, you know, and so now they're lawyers, They got their own businesses, you know, and they're doing things and they looking for me. They're still looking for me, you know, to make sure that I'm doing my thing. And so it's just a responsibility, making sure that I'm mature on the mic. Because if I'm immature on the mic, then they're going to call me out on it, you know, and it's not only them. You know, I got a lot going on. So I got to make sure every time I come out, you know, it's on the righteous side. And that's hard to do sometimes because, you know, you want to just be free, but, you know, it's all in moderation. But yeah, the kids hang on to every word. And so that's important. I know that for a fact. They love the beats. You know, they hear the beats before anybody else. So they know all the lyrics to the songs. And so, yeah, they're the first wave of supporters, man. My own kids, you know, I wrote Clarity 1.0 when Robbie was 1. So I'll be on late night duty and he'd be on my lap and we'd just be, you know, feeding and writing, just me and he and I. So now, you know, 10 years later, it's like, man, I got a 10-year-old who shot the TJIF video. Like, you know, I told him today, like, man, you got a directorial credit, you know. So it's fun. It's fun. And I appreciate every moment of it.
Word. So, you know, lastly, I guess just to ask, you know, being independent artists and attempting to promote a record during the pandemic obviously is not something that y'all plan. Is you know, it's not like you looked at the schedule. It's like, oh yeah, so you know, once mid-March or whatever, you know what I mean, something's gonna happen and we'll be able to work through it and things of that nature. So I guess like let's do this for the final question as far as like let's break it up into two. So prior to the pandemic, let's let Di get that, and then after, so after and currently within the pandemic, what does that look like for y'all as independent artists who have a new project out, you know, and trying to, you know, just what did it look like before, you know, as far as those conversations that took place? It's like, okay, this is what we're going to do, X, Y, and Z, you know, we're going to put together a tour, we're going to shoot this video, et cetera, from the before side of things. And then the after and current pandemic, it's like, okay, this is how we have to pivot now to be able to, you know, not just stop everything and wait until, you know, there's a phase 2, phase 3 or potential vaccine, since, you know, that is allegedly not going to be here until next year. It's like, okay, so if we're talking before, what did that look like for Plugged In? And then for Jay, what does that look like currently during the pandemic for Plugged In?
Oh, well, I remember, I mean, pretty much we had been recording until we got it done. In my mind, we were going to drop it by Mardi Gras, straight up. And I was still sending him beats, and I was still sending him, you know, so that's more on me a little bit, because on the mix and doing certain things in that regards. But definitely we was going to get some visuals. I was going to come down there. I was going to at least try to come down there because, you know, we're going to try to do something with West B, to get a video, get a few visuals for the project. And then, you know, if I'm down there, I'm going to, you know, do a few shows and things of that nature. But definitely just my biggest thing, I guess you would say goal-wise, is to have visuals with this particular project, because I wanted certain things to be shown. If I get down to Baton Rouge, we going to St. George. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
I'm here right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Yeah, we were gonna do all of that. Like, I was gonna at least try to go this summer, like probably later on in the summer. But definitely just pushing the project, and then also it's just a lot of stuff shifting. I mean, digitally. I mean, outside of the blogs are dead to a certain extent,
Right.
so you know you can't really push it that way. But just word of mouth. You know what I'm saying? Hitting those email lists, and really like those personal email lists. And just going that way with it. And then also not trying to attach it to something, because I don't think we had any records that will be attached to a situation. You know, I would love for us to have had a Panda record where you can attach it to something like that. But just we're working on different ways, possible licensing opportunities and that, on certain tracks and things like that. But definitely it was going to be heavy visual based, and it's still going to be heavy visual based now, but we were going to do something different visually with it, based in Louisiana.
Gotcha.
Well, shoot, he covered all the bases before. Just in addition, man, I was actually planning a trip to the West. I was gonna be in Vegas, and so we were gonna hook up that week and do some things and shows or whatever we had to do. But that got scrapped. So like now, it actually bought us a lot of time. The timetable was slowed down
Right.
tremendously, and so I was the one, pushing in March, like, man, come on, nobody's coming out. Let's just throw something out. Let's throw something out. And so I think that's why the singles came out, earlier in the album. But I'm happy, we waited the course and got what we needed to make it complete. Because we were at 98% for like weeks. I'm like, man, what we doing? What we doing? So now that it's out there, and the first few weeks have been very successful with the with the family promotion. Like the soft record launch was on strictly Bandcamp, and so that was for our core supporters from years and years back. So we needed all of them to get a whiff of it, get a taste of it first. So now we're streaming everywhere, and we're all over. Now we can really get our push going, and it's really no rush. We man, we got the TGIF part one video. It's out, and so that's gonna go. And so right now we're in the first leg, just going to Labor Day. Especially, man, this plugged in 10 questions. This is gonna be awesome. Like I said, you've never really seen artists talk amongst themselves outside of the arena of competition until now, especially from the South. And so, we're aligned with a lot of DJs who got their own sets, because the DJ, what up, boy? The DJ is popular again. And so I'm so thankful for that, because man, the DJs been catching flack and just being devalued for the last few years,
Right.
just basically off of, telephone DJs. And so that's not cool. And so the traditional DJ, all our friends, man, we come together, and so, we all just pushing. And so that's going to be awesome. We got a couple other singles. We kind of letting the people pick the next single, because it's, surprisingly, I'm not gonna call the name, but I thought Beignets was gonna be the second single, but we might switch. Now we keep using Beignets for different, basketball mixtapes and things like that we're putting out.
Mhm.
But man, we getting all kinds of feedback. It's about 3 or 4 songs that people are really feeling. Even a couple of remixes, like I was surprised at that. So it's just a lot of excitement. And like I said, going from here to Labor Day, putting out more visuals, milking the YouTube, and we got the merchandise coming too. So shirts. I can't tell you all the other pieces, because we bringing back some vintage merchandise, vintage items for the summertime. That's gonna be real fresh. And so we're gonna definitely put that on our site, on the Bandcamp, and a couple other sites. And so just having fun with it. Hopefully, once things really open up, I don't know about shows, but we're gonna have to be real unique with it. But what I do want to tell you, Slang, is that we're on level ground with all the other 98% of the artists who've been living off of tours
Right.
and just living day to day, breathing through the music. We all in the same boat. So, like I was talking with, I think it was Marcel P. Black came on the show, and he was saying, man, Kendrick Lamar straight. But everybody else, Kendrick Lamar and Drake, they straight. But everybody else, man, they just trying to make it work. And so I think you're gonna see a lot more collaborations, not only between us and other existing artists, but all the artists. This is a humbling experience. And so, the bottom feeder is gonna come up, baby. And so, we're just having fun with it, because we're doing what we've always been doing. And I think at the end of the day, the real listeners and the real supporters, they see that. And so, we're thankful. It's gonna be a good year. We're gonna turn it around, because 2021 gonna be serious. Solo albums coming too. So, we're just riding. And I mean, it's just been a thankful time, because every time you do a collaboration project, it's bigger than you. You can step outside of your own self and sight. And so, man, we got new life. We got new energy. And so, it's gonna be an interesting close to the year going into 2021.
Word. And, speaking of being thankful, give thanks to y'all for, the opportunity to be able to chop it up and, discuss Plugged In. And with that being said, before we get out of here, y'all plug your social media networks and where the new project can be found at.
Dialogue.
Oh yeah, the dialogue at Instagram, at Twitter, and that's LDAILOGUE. For all you folks that want to spell it correctly, no, it's LDAIALOGUE. I get a lot of that.
Right.
And then also the overground.com, one of the last rap blogs. I own that. So, almost 500,000 hits later, I still own it. I still post content on that particular site. And then, that would be it. I mean, all streaming. You know what I'm saying? Mr. J La Dialogue, all streaming. It actually comes up together. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool.
Plugged In, Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music,
right,
all that. But the one-stop shop, www.mrjai.bandcamp.com. You get everything you need, all the catalogs there. And if you go to Bandcamp, visit my brother La Dialogue, because he got 50 albums strong for you.
salute.
Yes, sir.